I think that the manufacturing sector, the earnings have been very much flattered by the weaker yen over the last, a year and a half.
Sure.
I think that's kind of lifting the veil, if you like. And even if you go back to the last quarter, the weaker yen was no longer as a bigger factor in terms of because we're beginning to see year-on-year comps obviously normalizing. Yeah. So if you look at the auto sector, we've had that big output hike after the chip availability, improved.
Yeah.
So we've seen that normalization already taking place on the auto sector. That's one engine. The other major engine of which you've been obviously talking about is the semiconductor production equipment in Japan. That's a very big segment, semiconductor materials related. And we've seen the Chinese are currently hoarding massive amount of equipment and materials in anticipation of the export restrictions becoming even more restricted, right?
Yeah.
And this hoarding is completely distorting the picture. And, we've had analysts forecasting great growth next year for semiconductor production sales. Very much depends on what happens in China. If the Americans start turning on the screws and which is what the Commerce Secretary in the US seemed to have suggested, that, hey, we're going to, restrict exports even more going forward. And if that does happen, then I think we're poised for a massive drop in sales within the semiconductor industry coming from China specifically.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's
past as well. It's
yeah.
happened in the past. It's like the same playbook, right? So they take advantage of that window.
Exactly.
To
but the purchases
front run.
have been phenomenal. I mean, half of ASML sales. That's incredible. Tokyo Electron, 48% of revenues coming from China. And when we talk to the companies, they say, oh, that's continuing all the way to Q1.
Wow.
So and the second-hand market as well. The Chinese are just hoarding everything they can get their hands on in the second-hand equipment market as well. So, this cannot obviously last and remain sustainable. So you can't really put a valuation on next year, given the geopolitical uncertainty. So we remain cautious on the semiconductor production, which has been a big engine and they've done so well already.